The girl left school with her brother and went home, after what all her family mysteriously disappeared. The police started a search, and didn't realize that it will be one of the most unique and horrible stories they ever seen. Sarah Maynard was like any other 13-year-old girl living in the small town of Mount Vernon, Ohio. Born into a loving family, Sarah was surrounded by her mother, Tina Harriman, her younger brother Cody, and her friends. Growing up, she loved spending time with her family, playing sports, and enjoying the simple joys of life in the quiet neighborhood she called home. Her parents was divorced and she lived with her mother and little brother, but she seen her father every weekend. He lived in the same town. It was November 10th, 2010, a Wednesday. Sarah's mother, Tina Harriman, had just returned home from her job at a local Dairy Queen. Her brother Cody was in the house, and a close family friend, Stephanie Sprang, was visiting. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, but just outside, lurking in the shadows, was a man who would soon destroy everything. Matthew Hoffman was a loner with a troubled past. Recently released from prison, Hoffman had become increasingly unhinged. His home was filled with bizarre collections, mostly garbage and piles of leaves, and he spent his days obsessed with survival tactics in nature. But on this night, his plan was more sinister than anyone could have guessed. Hoffman entered the Harriman household through the garage with the intent to rob the family. But when he encountered Tina, Cody, and Stephanie, the situation escalated. Hoffman, armed with a knife, killed them all in a brutal attack. Sarah, terrified and in shock, was left alive. Hoffman bound her, kidnapped her, and took her back to his own house. Sarah was taken to Hoffman's strange home. It was filled with mounds of leaves and debris, a reflection of his disturbed mind. For 4 days, Hoffman kept her in the basement, tied up, feeding her occasionally, while outside, a massive manhunt was launched to find her and her missing family. On November 11th, Sarah's mother Tina didn't show up for work, and her coworkers grew worried. That day, a neighbor entered Tina's home to check on her and immediately sensed something was wrong. Blood was found in several rooms, on the floor, the walls, and even on the ceiling. There were clear signs that someone had tried to clean up, with cleaning supplies scattered near the bloodstains. Panic set in, and soon, the police were involved. The scene inside the house was horrifying. There were pools of blood, smeared trails, and cleaning supplies left out as if someone had tried, but failed, to cover up a crime. But what was most disturbing was that there were no bodies. Tina, Cody, Stephanie, and Sarah were all missing. This wasn't just a murder scene, it was a full-scale abduction. Detectives began piecing together clues from the blood evidence, but they couldn't figure out what had happened to the bodies or where the missing family members were. They knew time was running out. With every passing hour, Sarah's chances of survival seemed to dwindle. That's when a tip came in that led them to Matthew Hoffman. Police were already aware of Hoffman. He was a known ex-convict with a history of burglary, and his behavior had raised red flags before. When detectives went to Hoffman's house, they found a disturbing scene. His house was filthy, filled with trash, leaves, and other bizarre items, but more importantly, they found Sarah Maynard, alive, tied up in the basement. Sarah was alive, but she was traumatized. For 4 days she had been held captive in Hoffman's basement, unsure of what would happen to her next, but thanks to her strength and the relentless search by law enforcement, she was rescued just in time. With Sarah safe, detectives turned their attention to Hoffman. It didn't take long for him to break down during interrogation. Hoffman confessed to the murders of Tina, Cody, and Stephanie. He had dismembered their bodies and hidden them in one of the most bizarre locations imaginable, inside a hollowed-out tree in the remote Kokosing wildlife area. In January 2011, Matthew Hoffman was charged with multiple counts of murder and kidnapping. He pleaded guilty to avoid the death penalty and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Justice had been served, but for Sarah, the healing process had only just begun. Despite everything Sarah had endured, the loss of her mother, her brother, and a close family friend, she showed incredible resilience. She had survived an unthinkable ordeal, and in the years that followed, she worked hard to rebuild her life. Her strength in the face of such horror has been an inspiration to many. In memory of Tina Herman, Cody Maynard, and Stephanie Sprang. Thank you for watching. If you found Sarah's story inspiring, please like and subscribe to hear more stories of courage, survival, and justice.